Go back to KB News Midday. All right, it's now time for our weekly political segment, Texas Face Off. You can watch it here every midday, Tuesdays at 11:30. Joining us, Tara Pohlmeyer, the Communication Director at Progress Texas, and Matt Makoviak, Chairman of the Travis County Republican Party. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Morning. Matt, let's start with you. President Trump was in El Paso last night. How do you think he did?
I thought he did fine. I thought that running through the accomplishments he's had in the first almost 3 years in office, 2.5 years in office, I thought was impressive. He obviously wanted to talk about the border. He wanted to, highlight a lot of the same messages that he used in his State of the Union address. Clearly fired up Republican base. I was a little bit concerned that the timing of the speech may interrupt the progress up on Capitol Hill to try and get a budget deal. It appears that they had kind of agreed to a deal just before he went up on stage. So I don't think it did affect that. But look, this is an issue he's really comfortable talking about. He sees a contrast between the two parties. He wants to highlight it as much as possible. And even if he ultimately agrees to this spending deal, and if it passes Congress by Friday, I still think he's likely to issue an emergency declaration to try to move money from one department to another to add additional border security.
I want to get your thoughts on that as well. But first of all, Beto O'Rourke was across the street. We all know he came to fame in the race against Ted Cruz nationally. I thought he was going to announce last night he was throwing his hat into the ring. He did not. Tara, is he going to run for president, and is it a good idea for him to run for president?
I think what's clear with Beto O'Rourke is that he truly cares about the U.S., he cares about Texans, and he cares about El Paso. And I think that's what yesterday was about. Over 40 organizations came together and created this March for Truth opposite Trump's rally, and really came together to show that it is El Paso's status as a border town that is its strength. And that's why the people live there, that it's a wonderful place to raise a family, and it's a wonderful place for Texans to be. And so that was what yesterday was about, was a celebration of El Paso.
Do you think he's waited too long, though, at this point? Do you think he should have done it immediately? Now there's so many big names in the Democratic side of that ticket. Do you think he's waiting too long?
I think he's weighing his options.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too late. I think we've had a few people announce if he was wanting to run for president, but I think he's still weighing his options with his family and stuff like that.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned just a second ago, Matt, about the vote, potentially a vote tomorrow concerning this government shutdown that's looming on Friday. Is there enough money in there? You mentioned that. You alluded to the fact that he could still make the action to make that happen. Is there enough in there for the president or no?
Yeah, look, I think you're going to see his base really oppose this deal. It's only, I think, a little bit less than $1.4 billion. He was obviously asking for 5.7. He got 1.6 last year. I think it would, I believe it would add an additional 55 miles of border barrier. So it's insufficient. But I think from the president's standpoint, he sees it as sort of a down payment, and that he can hopefully use emergency declaration to move money from the Army Corps of Engineers. That may not be popular on Capitol Hill either, because there are all kinds of projects that that money was supposed to fund. So in some ways, it may be a deal that everyone can sort of grit their teeth and accept. The Democrats feel like they didn't give too much. The Republicans feel like he's going to get a little bit of money, plus he's going to do the emergency declaration. That's going to take years to work its way through the legal system. So both sides, I think, live to fight another day.
Is this the best the Democrats are going to do? Are they gritting their teeth, as Matt said, and doing the most they can do now, or do you think there's still room for more?
I think what's important is that there's a lot of talk right now between a wall and a barrier, and I don't think that there's any difference in those terms. I think barrier is being used as kind of a term to not give in to President Trump. I'd prefer to see, and I think any sort of wall or a barrier would divide our border communities, would take land away from people who have called that their home for generations, and would really be destructive for the U.S. and Mexico relationship, one of our closest allies. We do not need any sort of barrier or wall at the border, and so I'd like to see Democrats really push for no wall and no barrier.
All right, Matt, let's bring it back to Texas. The Secretary of State's been in the news. Obviously, everyone talking about the confirmation. Supposed to happen this week. It's been delayed. Now the vote was going to be Thursday. It appears now that's not going to happen. Is this concerning to you? At what point does this become concerning to you? Yeah,
it's never a good thing when a confirmation vote gets delayed. That said, it is something that's up to the chair of the committee and State Senator Don Buckingham of Lakeway. I'm sure we'll schedule the vote as soon as she thinks it's time. I did see that Kel Seliger, the state senator from West Texas, announced he was going to vote to approve David Whitley to be Secretary of State. I think that was one vote that was probably up in the air a little bit, given some of the poor relationships that the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Seliger have right now. So, look, I thought David did fine answering the questions in his confirmation hearing. He probably needs to do some more private meetings and give some more assurances. It would be embarrassing for the governor if his own senior aide were not able to be confirmed to be Secretary of State. David's a really smart guy. He's a friend of mine. I think he's doing a good job under difficult circumstances. They obviously kind of bungled focusing on the headline number, not focusing on the substance of what was actually in the announcement. And I think they're working through that now.
Tara, let me ask you something along those lines. If it does get out of committee and gets to the full Senate, where do the Democrats stand?
So I think the Democrats are absolutely against confirming David Whitley for this position, Governor Greg Abbott's nominee. Really, David Whitley has furthered the history of voter suppression that we have here in Texas. Texas has a history of making sure that Black and brown people, that students, that other marginalized communities are not able to vote legally, and that is not okay. That is something that David Whitley has furthered with this announcement that all of these people who have turned out to be naturalized citizens are on this list. That's voter intimidation, that's voter suppression, and we at Progress Texas as well as Common Cause Texas are pushing for him, for senators, all senators, to vote no on him.
All right. The story is yet to be told there. Matt, thank you so much, Tara. Pleasure to have you all with us again with your thoughts this midday. All right, moving right along this morning. Of course, we'll have much more coming up right after the break. Stay with us.